this stage we assess that some provisional IRA organisational infrastructure continues to exist, but has undergone significant change.
Contrary to what the Chief Constable of the PSNI claims, the IRA has gone away.
A man has been murdered at the hands of those linked to a party of government. This is unacceptable.
You have to leave the past where it is. And if these people hadn't came forward, I mean, none of the bodies would have been found.
Kevin McGuigan had just arrived home when he stepped out of his car. Hooded gunmen opened fire with semi-automatic weapons. The former IRA man had lived by the gun and died by it. The question is, whose gun? The British government might not want to know the answer. His murder has shaken the peace process to the point where the devolved government, at the very heart of it, is on the brink of collapse. He knew his life was in danger. Kevin McGuigan arranged his own funeral. For 3 months, he'd been a marked man. The IRA had carried out an investigation, found him guilty of murdering one of its commanders, and sentenced him to death.
It's internal, and it's how they do their business. They sort it out internally. But it's a big machine. The big machine was at war, as they put it, and that machine was suddenly stopped over a course of time. I think what concerns people is the core components of that part of the machine can be readily put back together again, and I think we've just seen evidence of that.
Jock Davison was shot dead in May. He and McGuigan had been partners in terrorism, torn apart by a violent feud. The murder of an IRA commander and the reprisal for his death has put the provisionals back onto the spotlight. If Sinn Féin is held to account, it could signal the end of its power-sharing arrangement with the Democratic Unionist Party.
The DUP is not prepared to continue as if nothing has happened. A man has been murdered at the hands of those linked to a party of government. This is unacceptable. As a first step, there will be no further meetings of the Northern Ireland Executive unless we deem that there are exceptional circumstances.
Sources close to the Kevin McGuigan murder investigation have told Sky News it leads to the very top of the IRA. Detectives are likely to question 2 men of senior rank who are considered close to the Sinn Féin leadership.
The killings of Jock Davison and Kevin McGuigan were wrong. Those involved do not represent republicanism. They are not the IRA. Contrary to what the Chief Constable of the PSNI claims, the IRA has gone away.
The Provisional IRA was a force to be reckoned with. It claimed more than 2,000 lives during the Northern Ireland Troubles. 10 years ago, it said it had decommissioned its arsenal of weapons and declared an end to its campaign of violence. If anyone knows the terror group, Gerard Hodgkins does. A member for 25 years, he spent 16 in the Maze prison.
The Provisional IRA still exists, although it doesn't exist as a revolutionary army committed to war against the British state, but it exists as a small group of people who are left over from the days of the Provisional IRA's war against the British, and who have diversified their funds and resources into financial interests, and they exist as a small group of armed and dangerous people to protect those interests and protect themselves.
What's your reaction when Gerry Adams comes on the television and says the IRA has gone away, you know?
I laugh at it most times now. If he wants to keep saying the IRA's going away, he can keep saying that as much as he keeps saying he was never in the IRA.
But it makes you laugh because it's not true.
Because it's not true, and because everybody knows it's not true.
If it's not true that the IRA has gone away, the symbolic gestures of the peace process did not reflect reality. Why was the Queen allowed to shake the hand of its former commander, not once,
hello again,
or twice,
how are you keeping?
Fine, thank you very much.
but 3 times? And why did the heir to the British throne have a conversation in May with the world's most recognisable Irish Republican? Those historic meetings took place on the understanding that the provisionals were on ceasefire, had decommissioned weapons, declared their war over.
If IRA guns are on the streets, it isn't just a policing issue, it's a political one, because the terror group's political wing is in government here. Unionists only agreed to share power with Sinn Féin on the condition that the Republican campaign of violence was over. So the allegation that the IRA is murdering people calls into question the very basis of its coalition with the Democratic Unionist Party.
In Protestant heartlands like the Shankill Road in Belfast, there'll be a battle for unionist votes in the next Assembly election. By pulling out of devolved government, the smaller unionist party has piled pressure on the larger to call time on power sharing. But Arlene Foster, the woman tipped to be the next First Minister, says her party's never been fooled by Sinn Féin.
Let us not forget that the IRA perpetrated some of the most heinous crimes upon the people of Northern Ireland. I'm from a border region of Northern Ireland. I know only too well what the IRA is capable of. But we thought that that was in the past. We were told back in 2007 that they were committed to peaceful means. We didn't take them on trust. We always looked for evidence to see what was going on. And here we have a situation where the Chief Constable of the Police Service of Northern Ireland is telling us that the provisional IRA are still in existence and some of their members were involved in a murder.
If you want to see how much is at stake here, there's no better place than the ancient walls of Derry. The city that witnessed Bloody Sunday, when British soldiers shot 13 people dead, has changed beyond recognition during the peace process.
That's our street down there. If you look up from our front door, you can see Derry walls.
It's home to Martin McGuinness, now the most senior Republican in government. He was right at the heart of the IRA.
Do you know who murdered Kevin McGuigan?
No, I don't, but I do believe absolutely that it was an appalling, brutal murder. Different labels are put on these people, you know, former members of this, and the police say they think they are members of that, you know, of the IRA. But in my view, they're dissidents. They're all hostile to the peace process. They're all enemies of the peace process. They're my enemies. They're the enemies of all of the political parties in the Assembly.
Is there anything more that Martin McGuinness can do to persuade doubting unionists that you're committed to peace, that the past has been left behind?
Well, I have committed. I have committed myself, heart and soul, to the peace process over the course of the last 20 years. I think that's made some impact on unionist people in the north. It has certainly made an impact on unionist politicians who've found, as a result of my commitment and my party's commitment to peace and democracy, that they should enter government with us.
Do you feel your own life is in danger because of the decisions you've made in the course of the peace process?
I never think about that at all. I am absolutely totally committed and dedicated to the ongoing success of the peace process. If I was to be concerned about that, I wouldn't leave the house in the morning. But if there are people out there who are maliciously disposed towards my involvement in the peace process, and they want, bad enough to take my life, I'm around long enough to know that they have the ability to do that. Am I going to let that put me off in my work for peace? Not in a million years.
If the provisionals had gone, they'd have taken secrets with them, like where they'd buried victims simply known as the disappeared. Kevin McKee was one of them. 42 years after his abduction and murder, the still existing IRA gave up its dead. DNA results have just confirmed that it was his remains they located during the summer. His sister can finally give him a Christian burial.
It sounds strange by saying I'm so happy and I can't wait till the coffin comes into this house. I mean, The day he comes in here, it's like, Jesus, we've got our brother back. You know, we haven't had our brother in years. We didn't know where he was, dead, alive. We haven't, I mean, we've missed out on so much. You have to leave the past where it is. And if these people hadn't came forward, I mean, none of the bodies would have been found. So when I say I'm grateful, at least I had that bit of conscience to come forward. You know, if they hadn't bothered, we wouldn't have been getting anywhere today. I wouldn't be planning my brother's funeral.
A security crisis was the last thing they needed at Stormont. Failure to agree welfare reform had already created political stalemate. In London, Dublin and Belfast, they're fighting to keep the peace and bring Northern Ireland across the line to normal politics.
We know that devolution is the best way possible for Northern Ireland. We believe that it delivers for Northern Ireland. Yes, there have been huge difficulties along the way, but we believe it's a price worth fighting for.
So the IRA is accused of killing people, unionists are competing to be seen as the toughest, and the British and Irish governments are holding crisis talks. But anyone who thinks nothing has changed here has either forgotten how bad it was 20 years ago or is too young to remember those days. It's the fact things have changed that makes this crisis so destabilising. When men in masks are waiting to fill any political vacuum, the stakes are high.